am Penelope Sanders, 28 years old, raised in the quiet suburbs of Charleston, South Carolina. My family looked like the perfect model in the eyes of everyone around us. My father, Mr. Charles Sanders, 55 years old, was not only a successful businessman but also the chairman of the board at the city's largest church. A man with power, a commanding voice, and respect from the community. People called him the perfect father, but few knew that behind the elegant red brick walls of our home, not everything was as flawless as it seemed. My mother, Mrs. Evelyn Sanders, 52 years old, was the epitome of an old-fashioned wife. Always immaculate, dedicated to keeping the house spotless and making sure dinner at 6 p.m. was always hot and perfect. She was famous for her apple pies that won awards at the state fair 3 years in a row. But behind her gentle smile, my mother always avoided any conflict with my father, staying silent during his outbursts as if it was a reflex long trained into her. I also had an older brother 3 years ahead of me, named Andrew, upon whose shoulders all the family's expectations were placed. Andrew wasn't just the captain of the high school basketball team. He also scored perfect marks on his college entrance exams, earning endless praise from every teacher. Andrew is the pride of this family, my father would declare to guests, his voice ringing with pride. And me? I would stand off to the side, tucked into the corner chair, longing for a glance of approval from my father but only receiving indifference. From the outside, my family was the model everyone wanted to emulate. A two-story house with a white porch, a neatly trimmed flower garden, evenings of prayer at the dinner table, and bustling Sunday mornings when we all dressed up to go to church. But I always felt lost, as if the whole world was performing a play in which I had no role. When I was 17, during my junior year, I met Noah Williams, the boy who made me believe the world still held beautiful things. Noah transferred to our school mid-semester, his dark brown hair gently tousled, blue eyes calm yet determined. We were paired for an American history presentation. The first time Noah spoke, I was stunned by his warm, deep voice and the way he looked straight into my eyes like I truly existed, not just a shadow in the Sanders family. That day, when class ended, Noah asked if I wanted to study with him at the library. We sat side by side for 3 hours, not noticing time slipping by, our conversation drifting from the Civil War to music, movies, and our dreams. "You're different, Penelope," Noah said softly, his gaze making my heart race. "You see things others don't even bother to notice." That short compliment was worth more to me than any grade or certificate I had ever received. Unlike other boys obsessed with parties, Noah spent time in the environmental club and tutoring kids in a poor neighborhood. He played classical guitar, and every time he strummed, it felt like all my inner wounds were soothed. We were together quietly, unhurried. It was a love that grew from understanding, trust, and the belief that our future could overcome any prejudice. My parents knew Noah, at least his polished exterior. They were pleased because he had good grades, was polite, and came from a reputable family. My father even joked to church friends at home, "If Andrew is our pride, at least Penelope knows how to pick the right boyfriend." In those moments, I was stunned to receive even fleeting recognition from him. When we were both accepted into our dream universities, I chose nursing at Duke University, and Noah earned a partial scholarship in music composition, we began to dream of a future together. We talked about a small apartment near campus, summer trips, and the careers we'd build side by side. For the first time in my life, I dared to believe happiness wasn't an unreachable luxury meant only for others. But that happiness lasted only a short while before everything crumbled, the beginning of the tragedy that changed my life forever. The summer I turned 18, just as our college plans were taking shape, disaster struck and swept away all our dreams. It was a late afternoon in June, and I was getting ready for my shift at the cafe when Noah called, his voice ragged and breathless. "Penelope, I'm at the hospital," he managed before the call cut off and my phone slipped from my hands. I sped to St. Mary's Hospital as fast as I could. Outside the emergency room, I found Noah's parents, their faces pale, eyes filled with worry and despair. Penelope, his mother choked out. Noah collapsed this morning, and the doctor just gave us the test results. I forced myself to hear every word. Noah has acute leukemia. The cancer cells have spread rapidly. It felt like the ground vanished under my feet. I had to clutch a chair to keep from collapsing. I always thought cancer happened to other people, in distant stories on TV, never to the boy who'd played soft melodies for me just yesterday. In the days that followed, our lives changed forever. Noah began aggressive chemotherapy the moment he was admitted. Every week, I spent countless hours by his bedside, holding his hand, watching the determination in his eyes even as his body weakened and his dark hair fell out strand by strand. "I'm not afraid of dying, Penny," Noah whispered one night, his voice raw after hours of vomiting. "I'm just afraid of disappearing without leaving anything behind, like I never existed." Those words cut deep into my heart. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the cold hospital room, thinking about the future we had planned. The tiny apartment, summer trips, nights listening to Noah play guitar. Everything suddenly felt fragile like a soap bubble. And it was at that moment that a reckless yet meaningful idea emerged. We would have a child, a testament to our love, a part of Noah that would remain if he couldn't survive. We didn't make a hasty decision. In rare moments when Noah regained some strength between drug infusions, we sat together seriously discussing it. I asked him if he was sure if he would ever regret it. Noah held my hand, his deep eyes filled with fear but also unwavering resolve. "You are my family, Penny, and if there's anything that will keep me alive in this world, it's our child." One morning, as soft sunlight streamed through the hospital room window, we were together, fully and more sacredly than anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't a rash choice of youth, but a decision born from profound love and desperation. 2 months later, I found out I was pregnant. In the tiny bathroom of the rented apartment near the hospital, 2 red lines appeared on the test. My hands trembled so much that I had to sit down on the cool tile floor. I felt overwhelming joy mixed with indescribable fear. I knew my family would never understand. I knew if my father found out, his fury would be unstoppable. But I also knew I had chosen this path and I wouldn't turn back. I planned to wait a few weeks until Noah got through the harsh round of chemotherapy, when he was strong enough to face my parents with me. I imagined it countless times. Noah standing beside me, his calm voice telling my parents about our love, the terrible illness he was fighting, and the child who was our final gift of love. But life didn't give me that chance. One evening after a late shift, I came home and saw my mother's car parked in front of the house. My heart pounded as I peeked through the kitchen window. My mother was holding something, her eyes red, hands shaking. I opened the door and saw the pregnancy test, the very one I had hidden carefully in my vanity drawer, lying exposed on the dining table like undeniable evidence. "Penelope," my mother's voice was hoarse. "Is this true?" She looked up, eyes filled with panic, pain, and disappointment. I stood frozen in the doorway, every scenario I had rehearsed for this conversation evaporating. At that moment, I knew everything was about to collapse. "Why?" My mother burst into tears. "What were you thinking doing this? Don't you know you've destroyed everything? Your father, he will never forgive you, Penelope." I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. In my mind, images of Noah lying weak in his hospital bed kept flashing. I couldn't let this baby disappear. I couldn't deny the part of Noah growing inside me. My pleas hadn't even left my lips when I heard my father's car pull up outside. The engine cut off, followed by the car door slamming shut. His shadow appeared in the window. Heavy. Cold. I had never felt fear like that before. The air thickened as if a storm was about to engulf my life. My father's footsteps thudded heavily on the porch steps, like a drum signaling disaster. The door swung open, night air rushing in and making the lamp flicker. He stood there, still in his dark charcoal suit, tie askew, his eyes sweeping over me and my mother like a cold blade. Then his gaze landed on the pregnancy test on the table. For a brief second, time seemed to freeze. "Penelope," he said, his voice deep and eerily calm. "Is this real?" Each word dropped like a stone into a deep well. I opened my mouth, but my mother spoke first. "Charles, I found it. I didn't know what to do." She almost crumbled as she spoke, but my father stood firm, his body rigid like stone. I gathered all my courage, my voice trembling. "Yes, I'm pregnant. This is my baby, mine and Noah's." The name Noah made his eyes flash with rage. In that moment, the atmosphere thickened like a storm ready to break. "How dare you do this?" my father growled, his face turning red. "After everything I taught you, everything this family stands for? You've ruined our family's honor. Do you understand?" I shook my head, tears spilling out. "Dad, please listen. Noah has cancer. He might not make it. This baby is a part of him. Proof of our love." "Enough!" my father shouted, slamming his fist on the table so hard a vase toppled over, water spilling onto the wooden floor. My mother flinched, her hands trembling. "I don't care about love or feelings. The only thing that matters is the honor of the Sanders family. You have two choices, Penelope. Terminate this pregnancy immediately, or leave this house forever." I was stunned. Every word he spoke felt like a slap across my face. I looked at my mother, hoping for support, but she only lowered her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then Andrew, my brother I once thought would at least protect me, stepped out from the hallway, his eyes as cold as a winter night. "You're not just destroying your own life, Penelope," Andrew said. "You're dragging this entire family into the mud." "I won't get an abortion," I burst out, my voice feeling strangled. "My baby is all I have left of Noah. I can't kill my own child." My father slowly removed his glasses, his dark eyes staring at me like I was a stranger. "Then pack your things. Tonight. From this moment on, you are no longer my daughter." Those words cut deeper than any knife. I stood frozen, ears ringing. My mother sobbed quietly, and Andrew crossed his arms, turning his head away. I ran upstairs, shoving a few clothes, some savings, Noah's medical records, and a small framed photo of us from our last picnic into a bag. Each step through the familiar house felt like a blade in my heart. When I carried my bag down the stairs, my father was already standing at the door, hands clenched so tight they looked like they'd crush the air. "Remember," he said, his voice colder than ice, "if you step across this threshold, don't expect to ever come back." I didn't reply. I just bowed my head, placed my hand on my belly, whispering to myself and the child not yet formed, "I promise, I will protect you." I opened the door and stepped outside, leaving behind a brightly lit house, darker than any night. The Charleston night wind whipped across my face, making me shiver. I climbed into my old car, started the engine, not knowing where I would go, not knowing what tomorrow would bring. Before leaving the familiar street, I looked back at the house one last time, the place that once held my childhood, but now only painful memories. I drove to the parking lot next to the hospital where Noah was being treated. Sitting alone in the car, I cried until I could barely breathe, my sobs echoing in the terrifying silence. My phone buzzed with a message. It was from Noah's mother. "Penelope, you can come to our home anytime. This will always be your home." A flicker of warmth broke through the cold night. I took a deep breath, calmed myself, and drove through the empty streets toward Noah's house. On the way, I swore to myself, no matter how many hardships lay ahead, I wouldn't give up. I would raise our child, I would let them know who their father was, and I would live to prove I never regretted choosing love over false honor. But I had no idea this was only the beginning of the hardest days of my life, when I would have to face despair, poverty, and shattered dreams. Noah's family home sat in an old neighborhood, its wooden porch painted faded green but glowing warmly like an oasis in the chilly Charleston night. When I parked the car, Mrs. Marion, Noah's mother, was already standing at the door in a thick sweater. The moment she saw me, she hurried out and pulled me into a tight embrace. "Penelope, you don't have to apologize for coming here," she whispered near my ear, her voice trembling with emotion. "You've been our daughter for a long time." The guest room upstairs was small but spotless, the sheets still smelling faintly of fresh laundry. I set my bag down, unable to hold back tears when Marion gently placed her hand on my belly, her eyes sad but tender. "Noah told us, you're everything to him. You'll never be alone, Penelope." In the following days, I stayed with Noah's parents, taking turns watching over him at the hospital. I spent every morning by Noah's side, reading to him, telling stories of old times to help him forget the pain ravaging his body. Some nights, I held his hand until dawn, listening to the beeping of the heart monitor. Every time the sound slowed, my own heart nearly stopped. One morning, when I came home to change clothes, Mrs. Marion called me to the kitchen table. Alongside breakfast sat a white envelope. "This is an invitation," she said slowly, sliding the envelope toward me. "We've registered Noah for an experimental treatment program in Boston. He qualifies for the next round, but they need a family member's signed consent." I took the papers, my hand shaking. This new treatment had been described as the last ray of hope, though the chances of success were incredibly slim. "I'll sign it," I whispered, but inside I was torn. If it failed, Noah might not survive the aggressive chemotherapy. Before we flew to Boston, I spent the entire afternoon by Noah's bed, trying to smile while hiding my fear. Noah looked at me, his voice hoarse. "Penelope? If I don't come back, promise you'll tell our child about me. Let them know how much I loved you both." I burst into tears, placing my hand on my belly, nodding. "I promise. But you have to come back, Noah. We still have a whole life to live together." The flight to Boston passed in heavy silence. Noah was taken straight to the specialty hospital, starting the most intense treatment of his life. Every day I sat outside the treatment room, praying without stopping. But after just 2 weeks, Noah's condition suddenly worsened. His vital signs plummeted. The doctors told us to prepare for the worst. I nearly fainted when I heard the news. In a brief moment of consciousness amid delirium, Noah signaled he wanted to see me. I leaned my ear close to his lips, catching his broken words. "I love you. Love our baby. Don't be afraid." That was the last time I heard his voice. Noah passed away peacefully early the next morning, as the Boston sky was covered in gray clouds. I held his hand tightly until the doctor gently separated us. Noah's funeral was held in Charleston, at the small church where he used to play guitar for prayer services. More than 100 people attended, including friends, teachers, and former patients Noah had helped when he was healthy. I sat between Marion and Mr. Peter, Noah's father, my belly already visibly round, a testament to a life waiting to be born. After the funeral, I had nowhere to go except Marion's house. But deep down, I knew I couldn't live off their kindness forever. My savings were gone. I had to find work, had to take care of the baby I was about to have. In the days that followed, I knocked on doors at cafes, grocery stores, bakeries. But everyone shook their heads when they saw my pregnant belly. Their pitying looks felt like needles piercing my already shattered pride. One evening, as I sat in the living room, the dim light shining on Noah's photo hanging on the wall, Marion sat down beside me, her warm hand resting on mine. "Penelope, you can't stay here forever, but you can't fall apart either. You have to find a way to stand strong to protect your baby." Those words woke me up. I started taking any odd job I could, babysitting in the evenings, cleaning in the mornings, sewing clothes for neighbors. My body clock flipped and my health deteriorated. Some days I nearly fainted on my way home, my feet swollen, but I kept telling myself, there's no turning back. The contractions started early when I was just in my 32nd week. That night, the pain was so intense I couldn't stand. Marion frantically called for an ambulance, and I was rushed away as sirens echoed through the neighborhood. The emergency room lights were blinding, doctors urgently wheeling me in, voices shouting all around, fetal distress, emergency C-section needed. I clutched the necklace Noah had given me, whispering softly, "Baby, be strong. For me and your daddy." A weak cry rang out in the operating room like a miracle. The doctor placed the tiny, red, squirming baby on my chest, his little hands trying to move. "A baby boy, 4 pounds, 3 ounces, the nurse announced. I broke into tears, my trembling hand gently stroking his sparse hair. "Welcome, Jude," I whispered. That was the name Noah had chosen for our son. But the joy was short-lived. Jude was immediately taken to the neonatal intensive care unit. I only had time to kiss his forehead before the nurse wheeled him away, his tiny figure disappearing behind cold doors, tearing my heart apart. Exhausted, I drifted off on the operating table, faintly hearing the doctor explaining Jude's possible risks to Marion. In the days that followed, Jude fought for his life in the incubator. Every time I looked at him through the glass, his frail body covered in tubes, I had to remind myself not to give up. Marion stayed by my side the entire time, my last emotional support. But I knew I couldn't rely on her forever. Once Jude stabilized and was discharged, I decided I had to find a path forward for both of us. One afternoon, when I took Jude for a nutrition checkup, I unexpectedly ran into my old high school teacher, Mrs. Martha Douglas. She had taught me English, the one who encouraged me to write honest essays. "Penelope," she said in surprise, then looked at the baby in my arms, her eyes filled with concern. I choked back tears as I told her everything. Noah, his death, being disowned by my parents, and my precarious life now. She gripped my hand tightly. "You have to stand up, Penelope. You still have a future." Mrs. Martha took me to her empty basement apartment. Much more spacious than Marion's living room, she told me I could stay there rent-free until I found work. "But don't just scrape by. You once dreamed of becoming a nurse, right? That dream isn't dead yet." That first night in the small apartment, I sat next to Jude's crib, listening to his weak, raspy breaths, the yellow lamp lighting up Noah's photo on the bookshelf. I promised myself, "I'll do everything so you'll never feel unloved." The next day, I started a new journey. Mrs. Martha helped me complete the paperwork to enroll in the evening nursing program at Charleston Community College. During the day, I worked part-time as an assistant at a nearby pharmacy, the small paycheck just enough for Jude's diapers and formula. At night, I studied, rocking Jude to sleep while reading until dawn. Some nights I was so exhausted I fell asleep with my textbook still in my hands. Jude was slow to grow due to being premature, but by 8 months old, he began to notice music. Every time I played recordings of Noah's guitar, Jude's eyes lit up. He smiled and tried to clap his tiny hands. When he learned to crawl, he would crawl to the small toy keyboard Mrs. Martha gave him, curiously pressing the keys for sound. I realized Noah's musical talent had come alive again in our son. 3 years later, I graduated at the top of my nursing program. At the commencement ceremony, when my name was called, I looked up at the ceiling, holding back tears. "Do you see this, Noah? We did it." Jude, then almost 4 years old, sat on Mrs. Martha's lap, clapping enthusiastically every time someone went on stage. His eyes sparkled with innocent pride. Right after graduation, I was hired at Charleston Children's Hospital. At first, I worked as a night shift nurse, but I worked diligently, always ready to cover extra shifts, learning everything I could from my colleagues. After just 2 years, I was promoted to charge nurse, then became the main coordinator in the neonatal intensive care unit, the very place where Jude once fought for his life, and where I discovered my passion for healing. Thanks to saving up and working extra jobs, I bought a small 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet suburb, with a backyard big enough for Jude to play and for me to grow some herbs. On moving day, Jude ran around the yard, his laughter echoing like magical music. I sat down on the porch steps, tilted my head to the sky, overwhelmed by sweet, tearful happiness. More than anything, Jude was showing a growing love for music. At 5 years old, he could perfectly tap out a melody after hearing it just once. I enrolled him in piano lessons at the community center. His first teacher once said, "This boy was born to play music." Watching Jude carefully place his little fingers on the piano keys, I felt Noah alive in every note, and I understood what is lost never truly disappears. It transforms into something new, stronger, and more beautiful. Life for Jude and me slowly stabilized, but I never expected another huge turning point, like a gift from fate. One May morning, as I was getting Jude ready for piano class, I received a package from McLaren and Associates law firm. I opened it, my hands trembling slightly when I saw the logo of Garson Therapeutics, the pharmaceutical company that had conducted the drug trial Noah participated in. The letter was formal and several pages long, signed by the CEO himself, explaining that the research based on Noah's trial sample had resulted in a breakthrough leukemia treatment, approved by the FDA and quickly becoming a lifesaver for thousands of patients across America. To honor those who had sacrificed for the research, Garson Therapeutics decided to pay a $3 million honorary compensation to each family of participants who had passed away after the successful trial. I sank to the floor, the letter slipping from my hands as tears streamed uncontrollably. In that moment, I felt Noah smiling somewhere, as if he was saying, "I'm still taking care of you and our child." The news spread quickly at the hospital where I worked. Everyone celebrated with me, and many encouraged me to think about doing something bigger for the community. For many nights, I couldn't sleep, wondering. Noah had lived believing no one should fight alone. What could I do to keep that belief alive? One night, after Jude had fallen asleep, I sat by the small piano in the living room, looking at Noah's photo resting on top of it. I whispered, "I want to do something worthy of you, Noah." And that very night, I began sketching out plans to establish a fund to help families with children battling cancer. Just a few weeks later, with the legal help of Mrs. Martha and some experienced colleagues, the Noah Sanders Foundation was officially born. I decided to use $2.5 million to build Noah's House, a free housing complex near Charleston Children's Hospital for low-income families traveling from far away for treatment. Noah's House would not only provide lodging, but also meals, transportation, and counseling for parents. When construction finished nearly a year later, the grand opening was held on Jude's 10th birthday. I wore a light blue dress and walked with him onto the stage. In front of me were hundreds of people. Doctors, nurses, patient families, volunteers, and even local media representatives. In that moment, I shared my story. The story of a girl once thrown out of her home for being pregnant, who thought she would never get back up, but found herself again through love. When I invited Jude to perform, he sat straight at the piano placed in the Noah's House lobby. His small fingers danced across the keys, a tender, moving melody filling the air. Many wiped tears from their eyes as my son played a piece he had composed himself, dedicated to the father he never met. After the ceremony, our story aired on local TV, including interviews with families who had received help. A young mother holding her daughter in cancer treatment shared, "We thought we were all alone, but Noah's House made us feel sheltered, gave us strength." Hearing those words, I knew I was on the right path. I didn't stop there. I used the remaining compensation money to set up the Noah Scholarship Fund, helping children of former pediatric cancer patients pursue their dreams in art, music, medicine, any field they were passionate about. Each time I awarded a scholarship, I told the kids about Noah, about how he loved life and music, planting in them a belief that nothing can extinguish their dreams. In just 2 years, Noah's House had welcomed more than 150 families, providing shelter, nutritious meals, and even group therapy sessions. Many of these families became close friends to Jude and me, forming a tight-knit community that felt like one big family. One late night, While checking the halls before lights out, I found a little boy sitting by the corridor window, staring at the sky. I sat down beside him and asked what he was thinking. He turned to me and whispered, "I just wish my dad were here like Jude's." I hugged him and said with all my heart, "You're not alone. Here, we're all together." News about Noah's house and the story of Jude and me spread widely on social media, then reached national television after a feature on a major network. The front page of the Charleston Chronicle ran a photo of me standing with Jude in front of the Noah's house sign with the bold headline, "Single mother turns pain into hope for hundreds of families." I never expected that article would become the bridge back to a past I thought was closed forever. One afternoon, after picking Jude up from his piano lesson and busy preparing dinner, the phone rang. The caller ID showed a Charleston area code, but the number was unfamiliar. I answered, and a deep, shaky male voice came through. "Penelope, it's Dad." I froze. 15 years had passed since the night I walked out of the Sanders home. This was the first time I'd heard his voice again. I didn't know what to say, just listened to his heavy breathing on the other end. Then he continued, his voice breaking. I read about you, about Jude. I'm sorry, can we meet?" Anger, pain, fear, they all came rushing back at once. I pressed my hand to my chest to steady myself. I remembered the nights I sobbed alone in the car, the days I went hungry to care for Jude, the hospital stays when my child was sick and none of my own family was there. But I also remembered that I had promised to teach my son about forgiveness. "Let me think about it," I replied, my voice hoarse. I needed time, not just for myself, but to prepare Jude. Over the next few days, I thought carefully. I talked it through with Mrs. Martha and with Marion, Noah's mom. They both told me, "The past can't be changed, but you deserve the right to set boundaries for the present." In the end, I wrote an email to Dad, Mom, and Andrew. I kept it brief but clear. I was open to a meeting, but everything would happen on my terms. First, they had to understand Jude was my top priority, and I wouldn't let anyone hurt him again. And if the meeting was only to shift blame or offer excuses, I was ready to close that door forever. 3 days later, I got a reply from Andrew. His email said, "Penelope, you don't know how many years I've regretted everything. Mom and Dad have changed a lot, especially after Dad's heart attack. They want to see you and apologize. I promise I won't let things go wrong." We arranged to meet at Noah's house, the place where I felt safe and where my story was clear. It was a Sunday afternoon. Jude wore a white shirt, excitedly carrying his small music bag, eager to share his new piece with his grandparents. I told him, "You can call them Grandpa and Grandma if you want, but you don't have to force yourself to love anyone." When the familiar SUV pulled up in front of Noah's house, I had to take several deep breaths to steady myself. The car door opened, and Dad stepped out, leaning on a cane, looking much older than his 67 years. Mom followed, her hair completely gray, eyes red and puffy. Andrew, now nearly 40, was still tall but thinner than before, and his eyes met mine with awkwardness and remorse. The first moments were heavy with silence. Then Jude tugged my hand, looked up at them, and said clearly, "I'm Jude Sanders. It's nice to meet you, Grandpa and Grandma." His voice was pure and polite enough to bring tears to Mom's eyes. She bent down, her voice trembling. You look just like Noah." I stood next to my son, my hand firmly on his shoulder. Dad took a deep breath, his eyes watery. "Penelope, I have no excuse for what happened back then. Can you give your mother and me a chance to make things right?" I raised my head and looked straight into Dad's eyes. For the first time, I saw vulnerability there instead of the suffocating pride of the past. I took a deep breath and replied calmly, "We can try, but everything needs time and honesty. If you're only here to ease your conscience without a willingness to love unconditionally, we should stop now." Andrew stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I don't deserve to be your brother, but I want to try. Let me be part of your lives. We all walked into Noah's house together, where Jude's piano playing rang out like a greeting, the notes filling the quiet space and easing the tension. I led them through the rooms, sharing stories about the children who'd found hope there, and telling how I learned to stand back up when everyone thought I would fall. That meeting didn't erase the past, but it was the first step toward starting over, built on truth, respect, and unconditional love. The evening ended as the sky darkened, Jude, worn out from his excitement, asleep in my arms. Before we parted ways, Dad gently placed his hand on my shoulder, his eyes stripped of pride and full of genuine remorse. I know I missed too much. If you're willing, let us prove we can start again. In the weeks that followed, I stuck firmly to the principles I had set. Every interaction had to come from genuine goodwill, with no pressure or pretense. Every weekend, my parents came to Noah's house to visit Jude. At first, just sitting quietly while he played piano or reading children's books together in the small library. I watched closely for any signs of hidden blame, but over time I realized that instead of just saying sorry, they began to truly listen. One afternoon, when Jude proudly showed off a new song he composed, my mother unexpectedly pulled a small wooden box from her purse. "I've kept this all these years," she said softly. I opened it and found a tiny gold bracelet I used to wear as a baby, along with a few faded old family photos. Her voice broke. "I never thought I'd have the chance to give this back to you." Andrew changed a lot too. After several visits playing Legos with Jude, he asked if Jude could come spend weekends at his house. He was married with 2 young daughters, and the 3 kids quickly bonded. For the first time, Jude experienced what it felt like to have cousins. I hadn't forgotten the day Andrew once told me I was destroying the family's honor, but watching him patiently help Jude build models, I knew the past no longer had to be a chain holding us back. My parents didn't just take part in Jude's life, they slowly came to understand my work and mission. Dad offered financial support to Noah's house, while Mom signed up to volunteer, helping clean and prepare breakfast for families staying there. One Sunday morning, I came down to the lobby of Noah's house and saw Dad, the man who once cared more about reputation than anything else, assembling bunk beds for the newly opened room. Sweat glistened on his forehead as he gave me a gentle smile. "I can't change the past, but I can do something today." Trust was slowly rebuilt, not easily, but bit by bit through the smallest actions. I also began taking Jude to visit his grandparents' house once a month so he could know where he came from, but I always reminded him, real love should never come with conditions. Still, the process of healing wasn't without friction. One night, when Jude told me Grandpa had said he had to be tough and not cry, I sat down for a serious talk with Dad. "Jude needs to know feelings aren't something to be ashamed of. I won't accept the harsh way of raising kids you once used on us." Dad was silent for a long time before nodding, his eyes full of regret. "You're right. I need to relearn how to be a father." That evening, I sat on the balcony watching Jude sleep peacefully. The lights of Noah's house shone over the garden, and I realized the greatest thing wasn't the reunion, but the growth in all of us. Not just me, but even my parents were learning to let go of pride to preserve family bonds. A turning point came when Jude, now 11, was invited to perform at a major state charity event. On the night of the concert, the hall glowed under bright lights, every seat filled. I sat in the front row, with my parents, Andrew, and his family beside me. Jude stepped onto the stage, the spotlight illuminating his face, and Noah's confident eyes shone clearly in him. He sat down, placed his hands on the keys, and began to play Rebirth, a piece Jude composed for Noah, for me, and for all children who had battled cancer. As the music flowed, I glanced over to see Mom wiping her tears, and Dad squeezed my hand, whispering softly, "You've done something extraordinary. We're so proud of you." After the performance, I took my parents for a walk around Noah's house's grounds. Dad stopped in front of the plaque bearing Noah's name, placed his hand on it, his voice hoarse. If I'd known back then what an amazing man Noah was, I never would have. I laid my hand on his shoulder, gently interrupting. What matters is that you know it now, and Jude will grow up with all of our love. The following years passed like a fast-forwarded film, each moment etched with what I'd endured to reach where we were. Jude grew up healthy, smart, and with a passion for music that burned bright. He not only carried Noah's love for music, but combined it with the deep empathy he learned from his own story. When Jude turned 14, he composed Noah's Light, a small symphony blending piano and cello. Its premiere took place at the 10th anniversary of Noah's house. Jude sat beneath the large portrait of Noah hanging in the main hall, his fingers gliding over the keys, eyes shining. The music flowed like a stream through every heart present, telling a story of loss, hope, and timeless love. When the final chords faded, the entire audience rose in thunderous applause. I looked at Jude and saw in his smile both Noah's spirit and my own. The woman who once thought every door had closed. That same night, after the performance, I sat with my parents, Andrew and Jude, in the backyard of Noah's house, where strings of small lights hung among the trees. Dad spoke slowly, his voice choked with emotion. The day you left, I thought it was the end. But today I know that the day you walked out was actually the beginning of a journey that taught all of us how to love again. My mother placed her hand on my shoulder, her eyes filled with pride. Penelope? I've always regretted not protecting you, but it was your strength that saved all of us from the limits we built ourselves. I smiled, watching Jude play with his two cousins, feeling a weight lift from my heart. For so long, I thought my worth depended on my parents' approval, on others' recognition. But those harsh years, raising my child alone, surviving nights without anyone to hold my hand, taught me that true worth comes from within. It's the determination to keep moving forward, the unconditional love I had for Jude, and the belief that I deserved happiness. Jude didn't just excel in school, he won a scholarship to join the National Young Musicians Program. He was invited to perform at prestigious venues from New Orleans to New York, becoming a source of pride not just for me, but for the entire Noah's House community, where everyone saw Jude as a symbol of hope. When Jude was away on short tours, I still spent time caring for Noah's House, working with new families, sharing the story of a boy named Noah who lived fully despite a short life, and of a young mother who thought she had lost everything but found herself again by protecting her child. Each passing day, I understood more deeply. The most painful wounds made me strong, resilient, empathetic, and always ready to reach out to others. I no longer feared gossip or needed anyone's approval but my own heart. One early spring afternoon, when Jude was 16, he asked me to walk with him in the park near Noah's house. He placed my hand on his shoulder, looked me in the eyes, and said seriously, "Mom, you know what? I'm proud to be your son. I'll keep writing music, not just for Dad, but to tell the story of you, the person who turned pain into something magical." I couldn't hold back my tears as I hugged him tightly. In that moment, I saw all the past storms become rain that nourished the seeds of a strong, thriving future. That evening, I sat alone in my cozy kitchen, a cup of chamomile tea steaming in front of me. I opened a box holding my most precious keepsakes, an old photo of me and Noah, Jude's birth certificate copy, and the sapphire ring Noah gave me before he passed. I smiled softly and whispered, "We did it, Noah. Our family didn't just survive. It grew, it flourished, and it loves more than ever." I know not everyone has a Noah or a Jude to pull them from despair, but I hope this story reaches anyone feeling lost, to help them see that your worth isn't in others' eyes, but in your choice to stand up again. And sometimes, the deepest wounds can become the greatest gifts, if you don't give up. Penelope's story reminds us that our self-worth doesn't lie in others' acceptance, but in our strength to overcome hardship and love deeply. Even after being cast out, she rose up, raised her son to be a source of pride, and turned pain into inspiration that helped hundreds of families. In real life, Every wound can become a gift if we don't give up, because resilience opens the path to happiness and deeper meaning. What do you think of Penelope and Jude's courageous journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more touching, inspiring family stories.